the first time I ever went over to her house and saw her bedroom, she has a whiteboard in her room that said, "All boys are dirtbags" on it. I was like,
that made you feel welcome.
I was like, oh, that's how you see me? Like, I'm a dirtbag, okay. But when I asked her about it, and I think after a while, like, understanding what it really meant was, she knew her worth. She knew that she deserved somebody that was going to respect her and not be a dirtbag to her.
Right. Welcome back to the Journey Coaching Podcast. I'm your host, Tyler.
I'm Abigail.
I'm Dylan.
I'm Dylan.
I'm Abigail.
Your life, your journey starts now. So today, honestly, was not even thinking that this would ever be an episode, and then Jeff just kind of said, maybe we should do an episode about respecting women. And we were all kind of like, oh yeah, like, because that's what people want to hear. And then we went, well, actually, like, maybe that could be a really good topic, because I was just thinking, and again, Abigail, you don't speak for all women. You can tell me if I'm wrong, but it does kind of feel to me like, for as much positive has happened in terms of like advancing the position of women, that in terms of respecting women, especially among like young people, it kind of feels like it's going the wrong direction in some ways too. Like, I feel like I've seen more disrespect for women, at least. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong in that. What do you think? Maybe it's been that way the whole time and I just haven't noticed until now. But
I think it's a very complicated question. I think from my perspective, there's been a lot of positives from women advancing, but also there's also going to be negatives because it feels like right now men and women are almost against each other, it's a battle.
Oh yeah, that's a good point.
And I think that is definitely a big issue right now. And so if you wanted to talk about from your perspective some of the problems that you see.
Right. Well, I mean, I can certainly say, for as much as I was raised in a home where, if I didn't open the door for a woman, my dad would flick me in the back of the head when I was a kid. Hey, what are you doing? Go open the door for that girl. But Dylan, you could probably speak to this too, but I could say for myself that I've certainly made mistakes, in terms of how I have treated women in particular, in ways that I maybe wouldn't mistreat a guy in that same way, which is why it's specifically, it's not good to mistreat anybody, but there are ways I think that we are supposed to interact with each other, across gender lines, and it is difficult, it seems like, unfortunately, women tend to bear the brunt of the ways that guys mess up. And so, for me, that's been true. I've certainly hurt people in ways that I didn't ever intend to, but did because of my mistakes or otherwise. And I don't know, Dylan, you could probably speak to the same thing.
Yeah, me too.
It's not like you woke up that day thinking oh, I want to disrespect women today, but then you did something that was disrespectful in a way that was specific to the person that you were with, who happened to be a woman. Yeah. So
I think for me, and this is something that just from my perspective, is a lot of people don't realize, and this is both men and women, because it's just a two-way street.
Yeah.
We don't really understand each other, and for lots of different reasons, but men and women are different in many different ways. And I think one of the things that I have been found, I don't get offended very easily, and I like to give people the benefit of the doubt. And so this isn't a big issue for me, but I've noticed it when I'm in my future relationships, I definitely don't want to have this problem. But with some of my friends, more specifically my guy friends, they don't realize that I can be sensitive. I am a person who's very bold, and I say what I want to say. And so I'm able to have pretty good conversations with people, but there's just a part of me that's still very sensitive and sensitive to negative emotion. And so a lot of times my guy friends don't realize that, and so they can end up hurting me.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah.
I think, in the same sense, we don't understand each other, it's hard to empathize with each other. And when, at least for me, when I was a young man, or when I was a teenager, that was kind of a joke, oh man, girls are so hard to understand. But then when it actually starts to matter, and you don't understand, and you're not seeking to understand, whether it be a woman or another guy, but specifically in this case, you're not seeking to understand a girl, you can really do some damage even unintentionally.
Yeah.
Like for your guy friends, none of them are meaning probably
no.
to like hurt you or attack you, but they forget that you just aren't the same as them.
Yeah.
And so they forget to empathize with you and what you might be thinking and feeling. And
I think
like
I'd like to bring up like a specific example just so people kind of more understand what I'm trying
Sure.
to like put across. So like sometimes when I'm with my guy friends, like if there's other like girls around, like let's say there's like a very pretty girl who's just like, we're in public or whatever, and they make a comment like, oh my gosh, that girl is so bad, like look at her, like did it, and like almost like saying like more objectifying things. It's like, oh cool, I know that we're friends, and like you can obviously like say, but like when they say those things about women, it's like, oh, when I'm not there, what are they saying more? And like, how is this how guys perceive me when I'm just out about? Like that's the more like, okay, I'm a little bit more sensitive to that.
Yeah, that's a really good point. You have times where you like say something in front of a girl, like not even you wouldn't think twice about it, like if Dylan said it to me or I said it to him, but you know, we forget to consider how it might affect you, or what you might think about it. And again, that's actually true in all conversations, but I don't know, I've got plenty of stories of messing up and you know, ways that I regret treating people, specifically girls, in my own history. Dylan, I don't know, do you have any example, like lessons that you've learned when it comes to like how you treat women, or you know, how to be respectful when it comes to the way that you interact with women?
So to answer your question, I think I do have some stories, but first I want to set some foundations.
Sure.
So when I started dating my wife, now wife, almost 10 years ago, the first time I ever went over to her house and saw her bedroom, she has a whiteboard in her room that said, "All boys are dirtbags" on it. I was like,
that made you feel welcome.
I was like, oh, that's how you see me? Like, I'm a dirtbag, okay. But when I asked her about it, and I think after a while, like understanding what it really meant was, you know, she knew her worth. She knew that she deserved somebody that was going to respect her and not be a dirtbag to her.
Right.
And so that meant that I had to become not a boy, and I had to start becoming a man. And what does it look like to be a man, to be respectful to women in different ways? There's an author of a book, 5 Marks of a Man. His name is Brian Tome. And in this book, he talks about 5 marks of a man and 5 marks of a boy. He says a boy lives day to day, whereas a man has a vision for his life. A boy wants to be the MVP, whereas a man is a team player. The boy wants to play, whereas the man works. The boy wants reassurance of the crowd, whereas the man has the courage to take the minority position. And a boy is a predator, whereas a man is a protector. I think that right there, the protector piece, that's like the most important, I think, in this conversation. Is that, are we treating women as objects? Are we being predatorial?
Right.
Or are we being protectors of women? And of other people too, of kids and other men, like but you know, And so I think that all being said, a boy can be somebody who's 30 years old. A man can be somebody who's 15.
Yep.
It's not necessarily an age thing; it's a maturity thing.
Yep.
I know plenty of young men who are much more mature than some other men that I know. Men, in quotes.
Quote unquote. Yeah, right. Well, yeah, I mean, we all know guys, unfortunately, that, like, you know, from maybe, like, for Dylan and I, since we're out of high school, like, guys that you went to high school with, and you're like, you never really got it, did you? That is a really good indicator, to your point, Dylan, of, like, of those marks. They're all important. That's one where you can look at and you can really go, I can tell whether or not you get it, like, whether or not you've matured, based off of, how do you talk about women? Is it in a way that's predatory or in a way that's protective, you know? And if you want to be protective and not predatory, you also have to, like, treat women like real human beings, like equals, like people. I think about, you know, even when I was a teenager, I was with a girl and I we were dating. I didn't want to be dating anymore. And instead of just being forthright with her and telling her the truth, like I'm sure she would have appreciated, I thought that because of some other circumstances that were going on in her life, that I needed to lie to her and stay with her, even though I didn't want to be with her. And it's like, then down the line, when we did break up, it was long overdue, and there were other factors that got added in that complicated the situation. And I look back and it's like, the respectful thing would have been to just look at her and tell her the truth. But I lied to her for a pretty long time, like 6 months or something like that, because I assumed that she couldn't handle the truth, or that like I knew that, I assumed that I was so important in her life that she wouldn't be able to handle those external circumstances without me. And it's like, no, actually, that's just not true. Like it's kind of disrespectful to assume that she couldn't handle things without me. And so, even sometimes when your intentions are good, right, you still exhibit those traits of like, that's a boy decision, not a man decision,
Yeah.
Right. How would you have responded to that, Abigail?
I'm really I'm such a direct person that I've gotten in situations. This not even like, this is with like anyone, men or women. If they're not, but I guess I've had more issues with men not being very direct with me. Like, I need people to tell me what they want, even if it might hurt me, because like life moves on. Like, you have to figure out other things. So I would definitely find that disrespectful.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I kind of have another story to kind of tag along that idea. I went on a blind date with somebody, and it was a fine date. Like, I had a good time, but I ended up at the end of the night saying, "Hey, I had a great time. Let's do it again." Well, I never got her number. I knew her. We were on it was a blind date, but it was a double date, and so her mutual friend was one of my friend's girlfriends. Do the math in your head.
Yeah, right. I'm having trouble following, but I think I understand.
I could have reached out and got her number at any moment, but I never did. And I still feel bad to this day, like not reaching out. Like, maybe I should have reached out. Right. Maybe she's like celebrating that I didn't reach out. Who knows?
You said, let's do this again. And she was like, please don't call me. Please don't call me.
I think part of the anxiety for me was like, I don't know if I want to continue this relationship, so I didn't say anything, whereas I should have just, well, maybe you could correct me, Abigail. Maybe I should have reached out and said, "Hey, I had a good time," but I don't know how to put that. I'm not good with words. I
that would have been better.
You think that would have been better?
No, like
to
if you
reach
said
out?
like, oh, I had a great time, but I just don't feel like we're compatible. Like, that's very respectful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Instead of leaving her on red and not followed up. Yeah. Maybe I'll apologize to her one of these days. It's been like over 10 years.
Sure.
And I think she's moved on with her life, and I moved on with mine.
She'd probably be confused. She's like, who are you?
I know. Honestly, she might not even remember.
True. Yeah, maybe true.
If you're listening to this, I apologize.
Yeah.
I should have been more of a man,
Fair.
less than a boy.
Fair. So have there been situations that you've been in where maybe you have felt mistreated or like, not valued? So specifically as like someone's by a guy, like they're treating you poorly because, or at least in partly because you're a woman.
I'd say more like directly. I can't think of one off the top of my head, but I will say this. I think the reason why those situations are very like little in my case, because I feel like if they were a lot, I'd be able to answer pretty quickly.
Sure.
Is because I'm just like a more direct person. Like, it's easy for me to call out. Like, if I feel like I'm being disrespected, then I'm going to make that pretty obvious.
Right. Which is good.
Yeah.
But maybe if I talk to some of your friends, it might be slightly if a friend of yours who is maybe less direct, just like personality wise, it might be, unfortunately, maybe a different story. Would you say?
It would be. I guess it depends on like the woman, because I can't speak for every woman.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And we wouldn't expect you to. So I think one of the ways that I have seen in my experience women particularly mistreated by guys is like objectifying them, making them, into objects for the guys, satisfaction. Like, I think back to when I was in high school, my freshman year of high school, like most of the freshman and sophomore football teams, and I went to a big high school, so this is a lot of guys, like a big majority of guys on the freshman and sophomore football teams got suspended like the weekend leading into homecoming. And that was sad too, because then a bunch of girls didn't have dates to homecoming because all their dates got suspended.
Was that really sad? that they didn't have
Yeah,
dates.
true. They don't want to be with these kind of guys after you hear what I'm about to say. Fair point. They got suspended because they had developed this like underground ring in the school where guys would like reach out to girls and pressure them or like trick them into sending them like revealing photos of themselves. And then they would trade them with each other like in group chats. They're just like sending these photos of girls literally from our school like back and forth to each other. Like not only is that illegal, but it's just terrible. I mean, you're treating women like objects literally. And I remember like thinking back to that, even knowing girls who were dating guys that got caught up in this and then stayed with them afterwards. And I thought to myself, man, like I want you to have more respect for yourself to say, like, if this is the kind of guy that you are, then I'm not going to be with you. And yet, you know, because of the world that we live in, maybe they've just been convinced that oh, that's just what guys do. And it's like, no, that's not okay. Like, it's not okay to treat women like objects.
Sadly, that's become a very normal thing, and it's odd if you don't treat women like that, or you don't partake in that type of culture.
I think that actually kind of like what you said kind of shows that it's more normal now, because I've never like had a boyfriend and I don't really ever find myself having like crushes, because the majority of the guys that I'm like interacting with, I know stories about them, and it's like that. Yeah. And so it's really sad.
Yeah, we have really mature like Christian girls in our church all the time that are like, you know, they're getting towards the end of high school and they're like, I don't know, like dating is so hard. Like, it's like there's no good guys out there. And not that that's true, but especially when you're like within your local context of like, you grew up in the same school district, it's all you've ever known. It's like, yeah, well, that actually very well could be true, especially if the guys in your high school are like some of the guys in my high school were, you know? And so it's just heartbreaking.
It's a weird thing to be a protector, to be a respectful man who respects women in a good, kind, healthy way. Yep. And it's normal to be a boy, like I said. Yep. Like, it's really easy to be a boy, and it's a popular thing. It's a cultural thing. It's easier to do that. Yep. And I don't want to be normal in that sense. Yeah, absolutely. I want to be weird. I want to be off.
You should stand out as the protector.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But your point is still accurate, right? Like, I would assume that probably, you know, for someone in your shoes, Abigail, if there was a guy who actually was willing to like be a man and to be somebody who, you know, treated you well and who you knew didn't ever do things like didn't fall into those kind of traps, and who was more of a protector than a predator, like that's what would stick out to you too, even if it's not like in a romantic sense of like that's someone you'd want to be with, just in general, you would recognize in that guy like, oh, there's something different about you that makes me more inclined to want to be around you. Yeah. Even if it's just as friends or business partners or whatever.
The sad thing is about the guys at your high school who's traded images. Right. It's really a smaller picture of what's happening within the world. I mean, that's what's happening within the world.
Very true.
And that's why it's illegal. I mean, yep. We don't have to get into that, but
right. Well, and even on a micro level, you might be able to say like, oh, I've never done that, or you know, like maybe I don't even view pornography, which, you know, I really hope that that's true, and I hope that if you're struggling with that, that's something that you can talk to, you know, a coach about if you get into the Journey coaching curriculum of like things that you are struggling to overcome, and they can help you through that. But I also think even on just like a small scale, like what we traditionally would call like locker room talk, like, you have to be willing to be the guy that will stand out and say, hey, like, I'm not going to talk about women this way. You know,
taking the minority position.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Like, I know that it's going to make me weird among the rest of the guys maybe, but I am unwilling to disrespect women in that way, even if there's no women in the room, you know?
Right, yeah. How do we talk about women when women are not even in front of us?
Right, right.
And also, how do we talk about women when women are also with us?
Yeah, right. Yeah. I mean, I even think about your story. That blows my mind. You're walking, like, you know, you're somewhere, and one of your guy friends, like, literally starts everything short of catcalling a girl, like, in front of you. That is crazy to me. I just can't imagine. And yet I think, like, in a moment of weakness, a lot of guys could find themselves accidentally or purposefully falling into something like that.
I definitely think it's, like, especially, I think sometimes my guy friends, like, I don't you can't really forget that I'm a woman, but like when you're just like that close with someone, it's just is like,
right.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is disappointing still, but
yeah.
The way that I look at it, I have a daughter, and she's still very young, but I still would want her to be respected with utmost respect from all men, all women, everybody, at all times. Like I, how is me coming from like a middle school boy, high school boy perspective? Eventually, you might have kids, and you might not.
Yeah,
but if you do, for me, it's would I want somebody else talking to my daughter that way, in front of her, behind her? How would I want her to be treated?
Yep, that's a really good test.
I want her to be treated with utmost respect.
And from the perspective, like if you're a guy and you find yourself, you're like, I don't have kids yet, you could just flip it and say, would I say what I'm about to say to this girl in front of her dad?
Yeah,
if the answer's no, then don't say it.
There you go, bingo, right there.
It sounds so simple, and yet like, I mean, my heart broke a couple years ago. We're getting ready for church one Wednesday night, and that's when we have youth group, and so there's a bunch of teenagers around, and this girl, I just say like, hey, how was your day? She's an 8th grade girl, I think, at the time, and she's like, oh, it was okay, but when we were in class today, like the teacher stepped out, and then all these guys started like playing this game where they would point at different girls, talking about like what they would want to do with them physically, and like. I'm just standing there almost in tears as she's just describing to me. This isn't even locker room talk. Now we've moved into which is again not okay, but now we've moved into in front of girls' faces, and she is so used to it because that's just how the guys that she interacts with behave that she doesn't even realize how big of a deal it is. To her, that's just like, oh, it was an uncomfortable day. And I'm sitting there like, no, we need to go together to talk to your principal right now. Like, this is not okay. And so it's unfortunate to me. Like, and I, my heart breaks for people, like you, Abigail, and just in our generation of like, gosh, it's become almost normalized. Like, it feels like a lot of girls are just like growing up expecting guys to treat them terribly.
Yeah.
And that's really sad.
I get so like caught up in like the work that I do that I'm just like very focused on that.
Yeah.
And then when I go like talk to my friends and they're telling me about like the experiences they've had with guys because they have like time to, go out and do that.
Yeah.
It just is like, it's so heartbreaking. And it also makes it look very unappetizing. Like I'm like, yo,
Fair.
what? Bro, count me out. I don't want to be dating. What?
Yeah, honestly, I couldn't blame anybody in your position for feeling that way. We don't want to finish this kind of episode and leave you thinking, oh man, if I've made mistakes in the past, there's just nothing I can do. I'm a dirtbag and I'm just stuck that way forever. The truth is, all of us can do better. Like, all of us can be better. And one of the reasons why we are so passionate about coaching at Journey Coaching is we believe that all of us can constantly be improving ourselves, not only just in the way that we treat people, but also in our spiritual life. And so if you're interested in that type of improvement, if you're interested in growing as a person, whether it's in how you treat people or the way that you interact with difficult situations or how you perform under pressure or whatever it is, grab a Journey Coaching book, grab a coach, and just get together and work through that material that's designed to help you discover your strengths, understand your weaknesses, and then see how you can continue to grow in your journey. Because you only get one life, and so we want you to make the most of it.
Thank you for listening. Tune in next time, and make sure you like and subscribe. Visit us at journeycoaching.org, and check us out on Facebook and Instagram. Start your own journey at journeycoaching.org.
Your life, your journey starts now.